Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
All right, Commanders faithful, buckle up, because ESPN just did something that has half of Twitter, X, losing their minds and the other half nodding along like it's the most obvious thing in the world. They released their breakout player predictions for 2026, and sitting right there under the Washington Commanders is a name that made a lot of people do a double take. Terry McLaurin. Yeah, that Terry McLaurin. The same guy who's made a Pro Bowl. The same guy who's been the most consistent, most reliable, most you know exactly what you're getting wide receiver on this roster for years. ESPN's calling him a breakout candidate for 2026, and honestly, before you roll your eyes and close this video, stick with me. Because there's actually a really interesting argument buried in here, and we need to talk through it. So here's the deal. This take comes from Ben Solak, one of ESPN's more thoughtful analysts, and he knows exactly what he's setting himself up for when he puts a 31-year-old 5-time 1,000-yard receiver on a breakout list. He addresses it head-on. His logic goes something like this. McLaurin is obviously good, everybody already knows that, so how do you call a guy like that a breakout? Well, Solak's answer is that McLaurin has never actually had a season where he cracked 100 receptions. Not once. Despite all those years of quiet excellence, that particular box has never been checked. And Solak thinks 2026 might finally be the year it happens, mainly because of what's changing around him. Remember, 2025 was rough for McLaurin. There was that long, drawn-out contract situation that dragged into camp and clearly threw off his rhythm before the season even started. Then a quad injury derailed things physically. And on top of all that, the offense as a whole took a step back. It was a down year, plain and simple, and not really because McLaurin lost anything as a player. Now flip the page to 2026. There's a new offensive mind running the show, and this new scheme is built on movement, motion, shifts, players lining up all over the formation instead of being parked on one side of the field the whole game. Solak's argument is that if McLaurin starts getting that treatment, the kind of usage we've seen turn other number one receivers into absolute problems for defenses, funneling him into the slot on third downs, feeding him targets in the red zone, making him unpredictable instead of a guy defenses can simply bracket to one side, then this could be the best statistical season of his entire career. More catches, more yards, more touchdowns than we've ever seen from him. Now, is that technically a breakout? That's where a lot of fans, myself included, kind of push back on the label. Calling a former All-Pro a breakout player feels like a stretch of the term. It feels a little bit like Solak wanted an excuse to talk about McLaurin's outlook this season and just wedged him into the breakout category because there wasn't a better place to put the take. But here's the thing. Strip away the label, ignore the word breakout entirely, and just look at the substance of the argument. Solak might actually be onto something real. Think back to 2024. That was McLaurin's last truly monster season. 82 catches, over 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns, and a second-team All-Pro nod to show for it. That's the ceiling. That's what this guy is capable of when everything lines up right. And the case here is that 2026 could look a lot like that year, maybe even better, because of the scheme change. Solak even pulled up an efficiency stat that deserves way more attention than it usually gets: yards per route run. It's one of the best indicators out there for how effective a receiver actually is every single time he's on the field, not just when the ball comes his way. And on that metric, McLaurin ranked 7th among all receivers. 7th, that's elite company. Sure, there's room to round out some of the other numbers on his profile, but a lot of that comes down to usage, not talent. Get him more varied looks. Stop parking him on the left side of the formation on every single snap. Move him around, get creative, and the production should follow naturally. So here's the real question for the fan base. Can Terry McLaurin have a career year in this new offense? Drop a yes or no in the comments, because this is exactly the kind of debate that's going to define how we talk about the Commanders' receiving room heading into the season. Now, ESPN and Solak didn't stop with McLaurin. And honestly, this next part might be the most fun debate of the entire offseason. When it came time to talk about who's actually going to break out for this Commanders offense in 2026, there's another name that deserves way more shine than it's getting, and that's Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Yes, the 7th-round running back who quietly put together one of the more underrated rookie campaigns anybody on this roster had last year. Let's talk numbers first, because they tell a real story. 805 yards, 8 touchdowns. As a 7th-round pick, that's not just solid, that's borderline remarkable given where he was picked and what expectations were like walking in. Now, was it a perfect season? No, there were fumbles, and that's a real issue that has to get cleaned up, no sugarcoating it. But here's what doesn't show up on the basic stat sheet, and it's a number that tells you everything about what kind of runner this guy actually is. Yards after contact per attempt. This is the stat that separates backs who fall down at first touch from backs who make defenders pay for trying to bring them down. And when you pull up the leaderboard for yards after contact per attempt last season, the names sitting at the top are exactly who you'd expect. Bijan Robinson, Devin Akane, Jonathan Taylor. Elite, explosive, tackle-breaking backs. And right there in that same neighborhood, sitting at number 6, is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. That's not a fluke. That's a real signal. This is a guy who thrives in contact, who creates yardage that shouldn't exist on paper, who makes something happen in tight spaces instead of just going down on first touch. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The new offensive scheme is expected to lean heavily into zone blocking concepts, which happen to be exactly the style of run scheme that plays to Krosky-Merritt's strengths. If he can just get a handle on the fumbling issues, and to be fair, that's a real if, not a minor detail, there's a legitimate path here to a 1,000-yard season. Now, I know what some of you are already thinking, because the running back room in Washington got a whole lot more crowded this offseason. Rachaad White signed in as a free agent, and there's been a lot of buzz in Commanders' circles about what that means for the backfield pecking order. But let's actually follow the money here, because the numbers tell a different story than the hype. White signed a 1-year, $2 million deal. That is not a "we're handing you the keys" contract. That's a come in, compete, prove it contract. He's going to be part of the room. He's going to contribute. No doubt about that. But that deal alone doesn't disqualify Krosky-Merritt from being the lead dog in this backfield. Then you've got Jerome Ford, who's more of a wild card in this whole equation, could be a roster cut candidate, could sneak on to the 53. Hard to say definitively either way, but he doesn't project as a guy who's walking in and stealing a massive share of carries from the other two. Add in Jeremy McNichols, who profiles as the clear third down, passing situations back. And then the team's 6th-round pick this year, which adds even more depth and youth to the room. So yes, on paper, this looks like a crowded backfield with a lot of names competing for touches. But when you actually break down each player's role, their contract situation, and what they bring to the table, Krosky-Merritt still stands out as the guy with the highest ceiling of anyone in that room. So here's the second debate of the day. Who is your breakout pick for the Commanders in 2026? Drop the name in the comments, because I guarantee this backfield conversation is going to be one of the hottest storylines of training camp. But Solak wasn't finished cooking. There was one more bold prediction buried in this ESPN piece, and it might be the spiciest one of the entire bunch. Solak's pick for Offensive Rookie of the Year is none other than wide receiver Antonio Williams. Let that sink in for a second. Not a first-round quarterback. Not a top 10 pick with all the hype and draft capital in the world behind him. A receiver most casual fans probably couldn't have picked out of a lineup a few months ago. So why Williams? Solak's reasoning actually makes a lot of sense once you dig into it. First, opportunity. There isn't a ton of proven competition in the Commanders' receiving room behind McLaurin, which means whoever steps up as option number 2 is going to see real, meaningful volume. Second, quarterback play. Williams gets to catch passes from Jayden Daniels, who is by any measure a significantly better and more dynamic quarterback than what most rookie receivers around the league are working with. That matters enormously for a young receiver trying to find his footing. And third, scheme fit. Williams profiles as a natural match for this new Detroit-inspired offensive system. He's a smooth route runner, he's fearless working over the middle of the field against contact, and he showed real improvement cleaning up his drop issues heading into this year. He's got that quarterback-friendly reputation, the kind of receiver who runs smart routes, adjusts well when the ball isn't perfectly placed, and can line up both outside and inside depending on what the defense gives him. Solak even compared him stylistically to Amon-Ra St. Brown, the same comparison he used for McLaurin earlier in the piece, which, fair criticism, maybe Solak needs a slightly bigger comp list in his back pocket. But listen, if either one of these Commanders receivers ends up playing at that level of consistent every-week production, nobody in Washington is going to complain about the comparison. Let's actually dig into why this take has some real teeth to it. Go back and look at Williams' college tape as a 4-year starter, and the drop numbers did dip a bit in his final season. But here's important context. Across the board, the entire offense he played in took a step back that year. So it's not like this was an isolated red flag specific to him. And if you zoom out and look at drop rate as a statistical category across both college football and the NFL over the years, it's simply not a stable, predictable number. It fluctuates constantly. Some seasons a receiver has clean hands and barely drops a pass. Other seasons the same guy might have 7 or 8 uncharacteristic drops for no obvious reason. There's a real difference between receivers who consistently struggle to catch the ball and receivers who just have an off year mixed in among mostly reliable seasons, and Williams looks like he falls firmly into that second group. In fact, his drop numbers actually trended in the right direction as his final season wore on, dropping down to basically 1 over his last stretch of games, which is a strong sign heading into the league. Now here's the tricky part of this prediction, and it's worth being honest about it. As this receiving room is currently built, there isn't an obvious, wide open path for Williams to walk into a massive slot role right away. Last season, that slot role in Washington was dominated heavily by one player, north of 300 snaps worth of usage. Other receivers got looks in there too, but none of them fully locked down the job as a true full-time slot option. That actually works in Williams' favor in a strange way, because it suggests this receiving core is going to be built on versatility rather than rigid fixed roles. Guys moving around, lining up in different spots, making it difficult for a defense to key in on any one matchup. That kind of unpredictable, multiple-look approach is exactly the environment where a versatile rookie receiver like Williams can carve out real touches, even without a clearly defined starting slot receiver label attached to his name. And for what it's worth, when you check the actual Offensive Rookie of the Year odds boards right now, Williams sits around 8th on the list. There are bigger names, higher draft picks, more hyped prospects ranked ahead of him. But the fact that he's included that high at all, especially for a receiver in this specific situation, says something. That's not a throwaway inclusion. That's real value if you believe in the opportunity, the quarterback, and the scheme fit lining up the way Solak thinks they will. So there you have it. One receiver who might finally break the 100-catch barrier after years of quiet dominance. One second-year running back who could turn a crowded backfield into his own personal showcase. And one rookie receiver who ESPN thinks could walk away with a major individual award before he's even played a full season in the league. That is a lot of storylines to keep an eye on heading into training camp, and honestly, this is exactly why following this team is never boring. So here's what I want from you. Drop your answer in the comments. Does Terry McLaurin finally crack that 100-catch mark this season, yes or no? Who's your real breakout pick in that backfield? And do you buy Antonio Williams as a legitimate Offensive Rookie of the Year contender? Or is that just a hot take for headlines? I want to see all of it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed breaking this down as much as I did, do me a favor, smash that like button, drop a comment with your take, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, now's the time. We've got a lot more Commanders breakdowns coming your way all off-season long, and you are not going to want to miss any of it. Let's get to that next milestone together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.